A child's first 1,000 days is important for mental and physical development. It sets the foundation for lifelong health. Do you know what it takes to achieve this essential milestone? This is our focus today on sound health on Lagos television. Good evening, I am Olasumbo Modupe. It's so good to have you on the show. The conversation begins after this break. Please stay tuned. It is still Sound Health on Lagos television. Joining us via Zoom this evening is Ada Ezeogu, nutrition specialist with UNICEF, and she's going to share her expertise on nutrition and a child's first 1,000 days, why it matters. Good evening, Ada Ezeogu. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening, Modupe. It's my pleasure to be with you and privileged. Thank you very much.
All right, so how important is nutrition to a mother, child, and the family?
Okay, nutrition is the foundation, like you introduced at the beginning, is the foundation for lifelong health and well-being of the child. And it is important because if we miss that, it impacts in so many areas of not just the child, but the family and the nation at large. So it affects the physical and mental development of the child, which has lifelong effects in the end, which has implications for health, has implications for schooling and cognitive development, and it impacts the economy of the nation in the long run. So the effect of malnutrition, it's huge, and it cuts across the individuals, the family, the community, and the nation at large.
All right, oftentimes we hear about a child's first 1,000 days. We also hear about nutrition simultaneously. So now tell us, is nutrition all about rights? Is it about just essential nurturing or just nature on its own?
Okay, maybe I'll start with the 1,000 days because you mentioned it so that our viewers understand what we're talking about. We're talking about the period from conception to the child's second birthday. So if you add the number of days, you come to approximately 1,000 days. 9 months in the womb multiplied by the number of days, you get to 270, and then you have 365 plus another 365, which gives you the 1,000 days. And that is the period we call the first 1,000 days, and we say it is a great window of opportunity to impact the survival and the development of the child. And then you asked, is it a matter of
rights, nature,
rights,
or just nurturing?
Nature or nurture? Well, the nature or nurture aspect is a long debate, but let's start with the rights. Nutrition is a fundamental human right, and we have several legal instruments to attest to this. You have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, and the International Covenant on Social, Economic, and Cultural Rights, 1966, both of which recognize the right to adequate food and nutrition as a human right. And these rights have been ratified by ECOWAS member states, which includes Nigeria, which means we have committed to defending these rights. We also have the Convention on the Rights of the Child, 1989, which recognizes the right of the child to the enjoyment, the highest attainable standard of health, and that state parties shall take appropriate measures to combat disease and malnutrition through the provision of adequate nutritious food. And in 1990, the World Summit for Children, at the World Summit for Children, world leaders committed themselves to specific goals, among which were the right of children to adequate nutrition. So we can safely say that it's a right issue. The right to adequate nutrition is one of the human rights, and it's a right issue. Then your second question of, is it a nurture or nature?
Nature.
Nurture, which means caring, and protecting the young ones are during the growing stage. So we could say is nurture because the direct respondent or the first people that are responsible for the nutrition of the child is usually the caregivers, the family. And this has to do with them knowing what they need to do and providing adequate nutrition for the child. But it does not start with the child. That's why we talk about the 1,000 days. It starts from conception. So we advocate that we start with the adolescent girl and women of reproductive age, ensuring that they have adequate nutrition before, during, and after delivery, because the period of 1,000 is still there. So during pregnancy, the child gets all its nutrients from the mother. So if the mother is not well nourished and does not have nutritious meal and get the supplements that she requires, then the child would lack these nutrients, and it has implications for the child. It will result in developmental delays, it will result in birth defects and cognitive deficits for that child. So that child totally depends on the nutrients of the mother to develop within the womb. And most of the organs develop even before the woman knows that she's pregnant. The critical period of development happens before the woman is aware. It happens within the first 12 weeks, although development continues even after that. So we need to be sure that the mother is well nourished before she even becomes pregnant, because she needs the nutrients for her own health and well-being as well as for the growing child. So it is a nurture issue.
All right, Ada Ezeogu, thanks for that explanation. From your previous explanation, it is obvious that we cannot overemphasize the period of 1,000 days of a child. Now, while we are nurturing this child, while we are nurturing this bundle of joy, a lot come into play. We have some cultural beliefs, we have some interference. Can you please share some of these, and how do you think we can surmount this challenge?
Well, if we start with the adolescent girl, and even on to the women of reproductive age, I know that in some of our cultures, we have some food taboos. These vary from different areas in the country. You have different taboos, and some of them are restrictive. You might have places where they identify some specific foods and say the woman should not eat that food. So we need to be aware what the woman needs to eat and the different food groups that you can have. And even in a culture where you have some misgivings, there will be alternatives that the mother can still take. So yes, there are some food taboos that may interfere with the nutrient intake of the pregnant woman. Secondly, when the child is delivered, we also have some cultural beliefs. Some believe that a child must take water, particularly in climates like Nigeria where it is hot. But we know that the breast milk contains 88% of water. So it has all the water and all the nutrients that the child needs to survive and thrive for the first 6 months of life, and does not need any extra water given. So those are some of the taboos. Then we also have the occasions when in some traditions where you have babies, they are given some herbs. So that interferes with early initiation, because we want that baby put to the breast within the first hour of delivery, so that that baby is able to take the colostrum. That's the yellow milk, very thick, has a lot of antibodies, provide protective benefits for the child. But because of interference with some herbs and some other things, some people actually discard that first milk. And that first milk is the first immunization for that child, because it has a lot of antibodies and anti-protective agents that protects the child. So those kind of cultural beliefs interfere with the nutrient intake for our babies and our mothers.
All right, let's look at after the first 6 months of a baby's life, where the baby has been exclusively breastfed. We now see some mothers, they still live on existing cultural beliefs. They tell you a baby can't take this, a baby can't take that. We all know that you can teach hygiene, you can teach nutrition, but you cannot instill it. What should be the basics for every mother out there in terms of giving the child the right nutrition to thrive?
Okay, I would like to just go back a little bit so that we can highlight that exclusive breastfeeding period because it is very critical. When we say exclusive breastfeeding, we mean that that child will take only breast milk, no agbo, no water. Sometimes on prescription, they can take multivitamins drops and medication if they are sick, but you should not add anything to the breast milk. That's why we say it's exclusive. And so we recommend that you start that child within 1 hour on the breast milk. We call that early initiation, and that is the first hour of birth because it protects that child, particularly that first period, the neonatal period, the first 1 month of life. It gives a lot of protection for the child and reduces mortality for that baby. Then after that, you continue exclusive breastfeeding. I mean, just give only breast milk and you give it on demand. You don't time it. You don't say, oh, I'm going to give 3 times, 4 times, or I'm going to give hourly. You give it as the baby requires. So we say on demand. Once the baby wants to take and gives signs and indications that they need to be breastfed, you put them to the breast and you continue to breastfeed them on that. So that's the exclusive breastfeeding. But after the 6th month, the breast milk is no longer enough to meet all of the nutrient requirements of that child. So you need to progress and add complementary food. That's why we call it complementary. People used to refer to that as winning diets because you are winning the child. But this time we're not winning the child because the breast still contains a lot of the nutrients that the baby requires, but needs an additional support. So we say that is complementary to the breast milk. So you give the breast milk and then you give complementary food. Now the complementary food has to be nutritious, it has to be diverse. It has to cut across several food groups. So we say diversity, that will make it easy for the mother. It shouldn't contain just one thing. So you look at what we normally would say staples, like your maize growths, your other things within that group, potatoes, yams, all of that is in the first group. Then you look for legumes and nuts, like your beans, your groundnuts. Then you have the other group that has the animal proteins, and then you have your fruits and vegetables. So it's easier to look at it that way, and you make sure that the child has a bit of everything. So it's diverse. So that takes care of the diversity to ensure that it is nutritious. So you give that child, but when you start, the child cannot go straight to family meals. You can't make it the way you make your own meal. It has to be very soft, semi-solid, mashed, and then when you start, you don't start with big volume. You just start with a few teaspoons for the child to get used to the taste of that meal, and you gradually increase the complementary food until you're able to give, say, between 6 and 9 months, you're able to give 3 times, 2 to 3 times, in addition to breast milk. You must not forget the breast milk. And then after 9 months, you go on to 2 to 3 times, or up to 4 times as the child increases. So you increase as the age of the child increases, you increase the quantity and the frequency of that meal until the child is 2 years, when you gradually graduate to the family menu.
All right, what's the price to pay if malnutrition is not addressed?
You start babies who are malnourished in the womb, they have higher risk of dying in infancy. If you look at it generally, if malnutrition is not addressed, you have short-term and long-term effects. The short-term effect is that there's increased morbidity, so they are more liable to diseases and infections, and mortality. There's also the higher risk of dying. So you see that babies who are malnourished in the womb have higher risk of dying in infancy. They face more lifelong cognitive and physical deficits and chronic diseases, even in adulthood. The malnutrition also weakens the immune system and makes them more susceptible to even common illnesses like pneumonia, malaria, diarrhea. And The challenging part is that the impact of undernutrition in infants, it's largely irreversible. So if it happens and it's not managed, that child will not be able to achieve their full potential in life because it is irreversible, particularly chronic malnutrition. So it affects the health, long life health, it affects cognitive development, it affects their performance in school, and overall their productivity in later life. So it's huge, the impact is huge.
All right, I know there are policies like the school feeding program put in place by the government, state governments, and federal government to, cushion the effects of malnutrition. How would you rate these policies? We have the RUTFs and all that, the fortification of foods. How would you rate these policies in place, and do you think it will go a long way in changing the narrative?
Well, for school feeding, it's a commendable intervention. However, if you look at that and you look at the period we're talking about, which is 1,000 days, the child would have gone beyond that 1,000 days before they can benefit from school feeding. So you would have lost that window of opportunity for that child. However, for children that survive up to that level and are in school, yes, you will alleviate hunger, which will also improve their school attendance, their maybe ability to concentrate and focus in school. And I know some people have testified to children remaining in school, so attendance. But here again, you look at the number of children that are benefiting from the school feeding. You know that this is not from primary 1 to 6. There are just a few classes. I don't have the details now, but I know it doesn't cover all the pupils in school. So it is not reaching every child that is in school. It's commendable, but we need to go to scale for children to really benefit from that. In terms of fortification, that too is a laudable intervention in the sense that through fortification, we're able to provide essential micronutrients, which we may lack in our food, and which some of these women, especially the pregnant and lactating mother, requires. For instance, we have fortified our iron with our salt with iodine, which is one of the essential nutrient required by the pregnant woman. And I'm aware that also some flour products have also been fortified with iron, folic acid. So yes, that's good. They can get some of those micronutrients. But more importantly, we need to strengthen the health system so that it is able to provide them and increase their access to improved nutritional services within our primary health care facilities, where majority of the pregnant women visit. So yes, it's good to have food fortification. It will make more micronutrient available, not just to the pregnant woman, but also to the general population.
Your call to action as we wrap up this segment.
My call to action would be that we need to ensure that adolescent girls and women of reproductive age get adequate, nutritious, diverse, and affordable diets for their own nutrition and for that of their children, the unborn child. We also need to improve their access to nutritional services through our health care providers. And finally, we need to provide them with the knowledge and skill to be able to adopt recommended and appropriate practices in terms of nurturing the children and nurturing the pregnant woman until the child gets to the age where they can transit to the family menu.
Only healthy parents can raise healthy children. Give every child a fair chance. They all deserve good start in life. Ada Ezeogu, nutrition specialist with UNICEF, thank you so much for your time and expertise on the show. We really appreciate you.
Thank you very much too. Bye.
Bye. It is still Sound Health on Lagos Television. We now take a look at trending health report from around the world. Please stay tuned. where we say thank you on today's episode of Sound Health. Hope you've learned one or two things. A child's first 1,000 days is essential for a lifelong health. They deserve a healthy start in life. For comments and inquiries, or you have topics you want us to treat, send SMS to 0035 826603 or follow us on social media at LTV Social, #Sound Health. A sound health is a sound mind. Make healthy living your choice.